Hi, this is Jahan Mantin, co-founder of Project Inkblot.
Hey, this is Boyuan, co-founder of Project Inkblot, and this is Tech Rap Queen.
Energy, vibes, inspiration. I'm Renee Reed, and this is Tech Rap Queen. Welcome back to Tech Rap Queen. You know who it is. It is your queen, the Renee. Welcome back, Royal Court. If you are new to the Royal Court, thank you for stepping into Tech Rap Queen, where we have authentic conversations with leaders, voices in the community, table shakers, innovators, disruptors within tech design and culture. My two guests, which I don't think they know this, they are officially my first guest where I'm having two people on. I am just so impressed and excited about the work that they have been doing even before all the awakenings. Shout out to people who have been on the front lines for some time now, making sure they get their flowers and get recognized for the work that they've been doing even before it became popular to put on your profile. I'm going to bring up these two wonderful beings, Boywen and Jahan. Welcome to Tech Rep Queen, the both of you.
We've heard all of the things, but it's Boyuan Gao.
But I like the way you said my
Yeah,
name because it had a little extra something in it.
exactly. Jahan already knows the story, but my favorite rendition of my name is when this dude from Harlem called me a bourgeois.
That's our favorite.
That is
Isn't that fabulous?
I was like,
It's a
"That's right, I didn't
designer.
say it because that's an extra syllable, but I love it. It's just fabulous."
It's my name.
Bourgeois, and I kinda love it.
Listen, I'm going to let you know right now, it's going to be very hard for me to unhear bourgeois. Like you totally messed me up for the remainder of the
I'm
show.
so sorry. Yeah.
As you can see, we are going to have a great, authentic conversation. I always like to check in with my guests and ask them, how are you finding joy and how are you protecting your energy, especially the work that you're doing?
That's such a thoughtful question. One of the things that I've found that's been useful is just these small things that don't feel so small, like just cooking and having friends over. It's just these communal kind of spaces for like intimacy and just gathering folks or like just being with family. It's just like food and family and friends. I think with everything that's been happening and it's still happening in Kurd, it just feels like extra special. It feels like incredibly nourishing.
So I bought a house a couple months ago, and
Hey.
hey, a condo. It's transformed my life, and it's a great privilege to be able to do that, right? But I lived in chaotic situations up until here. It was just like the hustle, the grind, and part of that was New York culture and just the speed of it all. But the other part of it was I just didn't have a groundedness. I didn't have like a place to root down. So I'm telling you, my life has transformed since I moved in here. It's just joyful. Like every day, just being like, oh, we have a home. I'm grateful for this home. Like I say all the time, I love my home. I'm so grateful for that. Probably 20 times a day, I say that.
Let's jump into it. Let's talk Project Inkblot. What is it? How did it start? How did you two find each other? I know that's a compounded question. This is where I want to focus a lot of this energy because what you're doing is really important work.
So John and I are content creators. Like we're just narrative people. We love storytelling. We were both editors at a music and culture magazine. So that's how we initially made the connection. And if I were to go even further back, Jahan was reading a magazine, looked at the masthead, saw my name in it, and thought that I was like some Japanese dude who was like really into hip hop. I was a hip hop editor for this magazine. Anyway, she tracked down the publisher and then became also an editor for the magazine. That's how we initially connected. And we just vibed. We just had, some run ins in the office. We didn't know each other that well. And we just had tea one day, I think it was, right? It was like in Fort Greene in Brooklyn on an afternoon, probably Saturday afternoon, grabbing some tea. And we were just chatting and vibing and talking about our aspirations and the things that we were really interested in. And we had a lot of things in common. And so I think we were both in that space where it's just like, we got to do something on our own. I've been hustling like 9 jobs, working all over the place. And so we just decided we wanted to try doing something together. And so our first venture was an online magazine called Culture Files, because that's what we're into. We're into, stories, we're into different cultures, we're into music, we're into the arts. And so our inquiry was really around, why are so many people like us not profiled? Like, we're not getting any type of um, airtime. We're not seeing ourselves represented in magazines. We're not seeing our stories being told. And so our online magazine was really just like people like us, like you, Renee, right? It's just like creative entrepreneurs, people out in the world, all over the world, really doing dope stuff for their community. And the deeper inquiry was like, how did these people get their projects off the ground? How did they have the courage to put their dreams out there and have it be actualized, right? So we started doing that, and that led to like in-person workshops that we did. It's very hyper local in our community, working with mostly women of color who also wanted to transition their life trajectories and had like creative aspirations. And so we started doing facilitation work, which led to consulting work with creative institutions, art institutions. And then we just kept on seeing bigger and bigger. Like, how do we make a bigger impact? How do we make a bigger impact? And I'll shift it over to John in a sec, but like how we got into like DEI work, or really racial equity work, started with us doing so much programming and designing so many in real life programs, and just seeing like something ain't right. There's like a really big gap here. And I think it's something in the mindsets and the processes of how people create out in the world and who's getting the shine. So I'll pass it on to Jahan.
So when we started consulting, we're always looking at like who's missing, who's being excluded, um, and we just started to see there's actually a lot of things that we can be doing in terms of, when we say we meant the companies we were working with, in terms of racial equity, gender equity, et cetera, in terms of the programs that were being built. Like there are all these opportunities to start to ideate and strategize around this from the start. And then what we started to see was like that doesn't happen until the end as an afterthought, or because there's been some misstep. And we were like, this is actually, we can all do this. This is completely doable. And it really starts with thinking critically and interrogating what we're designing and what we're building, and starting to really create equitable processes, because our belief is that that can then result in equitable outcomes. But when the root is rotten, then it's hard for things to like grow. So we started to codify the process that we were using, and we called it Design for Diversity. And initially, our stance was like this, you know, diversity can be designed in. Um, in full transparency, we will be shifting language around that, because really what we're talking about is racial equity and not necessarily diversity, which can really be more of a surface kind of term. So we started working with companies in a variety of ways. And then when we landed, what we landed on was really providing design education via cohort learning series to really start to introduce this type of thinking, this type of strategic and relational tools into how we're designing and building.
I love the organic journey of this. I love to hear people's journey into the spaces that they were in, because you really understand what it's rooted in. How did we come up with the name Project Inkblot?
As we mentioned, we started interrogating the creative process. That was like way before we jumped into racial equity work, right? And so initially, the idea of the ink blot is that you start at a singular point and you don't know where you're going to end up. And that has been very much our journey. So, just to be a little poetic about it, if you really do look at the shape of things and how things just, you think you have a plan, you think you have an agenda, you think you have a trajectory, and then life just never really goes that way. And it brings you in all these different directions. And even doing racial equity work, we didn't think that we would be doing that work. That's just so deeply embedded in everything that we do that we didn't think, oh, we need to step into this field, quote unquote. No, it's every aspect of life. And we take a very specific approach to how we do that with teams, right? Or companies or individuals. And so now looking at Inkblot, right? Looking at the idea of the Inkblot, it's also our perceptions. It's like how we internalize things. It's our own meaning making, right? And that has everything to do with whether or not you're designing for racial equity. And it's like, who are we as designers is number one. We always say, who the hell are we before we ask, how might we, right? We need to interrogate that. We need to really locate and identify that. Where are we all coming from? Who has proximity to this issue? And you can't really be effective with anything relating to, oh, I'm doing this DEI effort. Like, great, that's awesome. But like, who are you? What's your stake in the game? And like, why are you even here? Right. And then what are you going to bring to the table? And who else might be missing that you need to co design with? So that's where we begin.